welcome back. I am Dr. Jennifer Mata. Today's video is going to be about learning objectives. In this video, I'm going to include a definition of learning objectives, the elements that are included into writing learning objectives, a formula that you can follow to best write learning objectives, and some characteristics that go into them. Then I'm going to share with you some examples of well-written learning objectives following the formula that I provided. So the audience for this video is going to be anybody that plans, and in order to plan, we need to be able to write learning objectives and know what our lessons and our experiences and activities are going to be about. So teachers, teacher candidates, parents that are homeschooling their children, and anybody that has the intention of providing rich learning experiences for children is going to benefit from learning how to best write learning objectives. So let's get into it. Learning objectives represent specific learning behaviors that the children will display in relation to the instructional goal during a particular given lesson. They describe in precise detail what children are expected to know or do within a particular activity or learning experience. So they're different from instructional goals. Instructional goals are the broad, more general framework for the lesson. They are what the teacher wants to accomplish or facilitate. Learning objectives are focused on the children. What they need to make evident in order to demonstrate learning has actually occurred during this learning experience. So what does a learning objective entail? The elements that are included in a learning objective are two. One is the behavior the children will exhibit in terms of making evident that the learning has occurred, and two, the condition under which this behavior will be manifested. So knowing the definition and the elements to be included in a well-written learning objective, what would be the formula to write such a learning objective? Well, we know that we need to include the behavior and the condition. Usually in early childhood education, learning objectives are written starting with children will. Then we introduce the behavior, which is denoted by an observable verb, and then we accompany it lastly by the condition under which that behavior will be observed. Okay, so some characteristics of learning objectives at the classroom level are as follows. One, we know from looking at the elements that are entailed in writing a learning objective that we need to include both an expected behavior and the content or context in which that behavior is going to be manifested. Two, we know that complex objectives need to be stated logically and specifically so that there's no doubt and no misunderstanding of the kind of behavior that we're expecting from the learner or the child. Three, objectives should be very descriptive and clear as to what is required of the learner. 4. Objectives tend to be developmental in nature. They represent direction rather than terminal points frequently. 5. Objectives should be realistic and should include only what can be implemented and completed in the classroom. And lastly, 6. The scope of the learning objectives should be broad enough to encompass all types of outcomes for which the school or the teachers are responsible. Okay, so let's look at some examples of well-written learning objectives. This is the first example. Children will verbally identify and describe the meaning of 3 national symbols. And that could be the learning objective. To make it even more specific and clearer, we have the IE, flag, coat of arms, and national anthem. So we're saying specifically what these 3 national symbols that we expect children to be able to verbally identify are. Okay, now let's look at a second example. Children will describe the importance of 3 significant Chicago landmarks of their choice in 3 complete sentences. So here again we have the behavior that we need the children to enact is describe the importance of 3 significant Chicago landmarks of their choice. So we're not specifying, like the one before, what those choices are. The context is in 3 complete sentences. So this is the way that they're going to make evident that they can describe the importance of these landmarks that they chose. Okay, so the last example is example number 3. Given 6 colors, children will identify 5. So if we look at this example, the behavior is to identify. That's the verb, the observable verb. Then the condition is given 6 colors. That phrase, although we've included it at the beginning of the statement or the learning objective, is the condition under which children will identify. And then we have an extra added component here for clarity, which is the proficiency level. So we want them to be able to identify 5 out of 6. This learning objective, though, could be further clarified by including a few elements in here. We could say, given 6 colors, and in parentheses specify which 6 colors we are providing, and then we could further describe what we mean by identify. If we mean that children will verbally identify, or identify in a written fashion, or will point to the 5 colors that they are able to identify. Okay, so now that we've covered how to best write a learning objective, looking at everything it entails, I hope you learned something and that you enjoy your teaching experiences from here forward, writing the best learning objectives that you can. So that's it for today. Please subscribe if you haven't already. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and I'll see you here next week.